Few policies in modern history have generated as much debate as affirmative action. To some, it is a necessary tool for correcting historical injustices. To others, it has become an outdated system that creates new inequalities while attempting to solve old ones. So, what exactly is affirmative action? Why was it introduced? And does it still have a place in today's world? To answer these questions, we must first understand the historical circumstances that gave rise to it. Throughout history, human societies have been shaped by conflict. Victorious groups often imposed their laws, institutions, and social structures on those they conquered. While many of these conflicts ended long ago, their economic and social consequences have persisted across generations. This became particularly evident in multiracial societies that emerged through colonialism, slavery, and conquest. Countries such as the United States, South Africa, and others inherited deeply unequal social structures in which certain racial groups enjoyed greater access to wealth, education, political influence, and economic opportunity. As the 20th century progressed and societies modernized, governments sought ways to address these historical disparities. One solution was affirmative action. Affirmative action refers to policies designed to expand opportunities for groups that have historically faced discrimination or exclusion. Initially, these policies focused primarily on race, although many countries later expanded them to include gender and other forms of disadvantage. The goal was simple: to create a more equitable society by helping disadvantaged groups gain access to employment, education, business opportunities, and public resources. Supporters argued that legal equality alone was not enough. Even when discriminatory laws were removed, the effects of decades or centuries of exclusion continued to shape economic outcomes. Therefore, active intervention was necessary to level the playing field. The United States provides one of the earliest and most influential examples of affirmative action. Following the abolition of slavery in 1865, African Americans continued to face severe discrimination, particularly in the southern states. A series of laws known as Jim Crow institutionalized racial segregation and limited access to schools, public services, transportation, employment opportunities, and voting rights. Although slavery had ended, many African Americans remained economically marginalized. Discrimination also extended into housing and finance. One notable example was a practice known as redlining. Financial institutions often refused to provide loans and other services to predominantly black neighborhoods or offered them under highly unfavorable conditions. This made it difficult for many African Americans to accumulate wealth, purchase property, or start businesses. By the mid-20th century, these inequalities had become deeply embedded within American society. The civil rights movement emerged in response to these injustices. Its goals included ending segregation, securing voting rights, and improving economic opportunities for African Americans. During the administration of President John F. Kennedy, measures were introduced to combat racial discrimination in employment. Kennedy is widely credited with popularizing the term affirmative action. Following Kennedy's assassination in 1963, President Lyndon Johnson expanded these efforts. His administration passed major legislation, including the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibited discrimination in employment and strengthened protections for historically disadvantaged groups. Over time, affirmative action became an important component of employment, education, and government contracting policies in the United States. However, its implementation has generally remained subject to legislative oversight and judicial review. South Africa's experience with affirmative action followed a different path. The country's history was shaped by colonialism, racial segregation, and eventually apartheid. Industrialization created economic growth, but much of that growth benefited a minority population. During apartheid, racial discrimination became institutionalized on a national scale, limiting opportunities for Black South Africans in virtually every sphere of life. When apartheid ended in the 1990s, the new democratic government faced the enormous challenge of correcting generations of economic inequality. To address these disparities, affirmative action policies were introduced, particularly within the public sector. These policies later expanded through initiatives such as broad-based Black economic empowerment, commonly known as B. The intention was to increase the participation of previously disadvantaged groups in business, employment, and ownership structures. However, despite its intentions, affirmative action remains highly controversial. Supporters argue that the legacy of discrimination continues to influence economic outcomes. They contend that without targeted policies, historical inequalities will simply reproduce themselves across generations. Critics, however, question whether race should continue to serve as a major factor in employment and business decisions decades after the original injustices occurred. This raises an important question. What should be the primary objective of a modern workplace, demographic representation or performance? Businesses operate in highly competitive environments. Their survival depends on productivity, innovation, efficiency, and profitability. Many critics of affirmative action argue that employment decisions should therefore be based primarily on skills, qualifications, and competence rather than race or other demographic characteristics. According to this perspective, organizations achieve their objectives most effectively when positions are filled by the most capable candidates available. Critics also argue that affirmative action can sometimes produce unintended consequences. In some cases, race may become a more important consideration than merit. When this occurs, workplace performance can suffer, potentially affecting business growth, investor confidence, and economic competitiveness. Others argue that affirmative action may limit the freedom of employers to make decisions they believe are best for their organizations. In South Africa, these criticisms have become particularly prominent. Some observers argue that affirmative action and empowerment policies have occasionally prioritized political connections over competence. They claim that certain beneficiaries of these policies are selected not because of exceptional qualifications but because of political loyalty or connections. If true, this would represent a different problem altogether, one involving patronage rather than genuine empowerment. Importantly, critics are not necessarily arguing that members of historically disadvantaged groups are incapable of meeting corporate objectives. Rather, they argue that race alone should not determine hiring, promotion, or business opportunities. Supporters of affirmative action strongly disagree with this assessment. They argue that merit is not always measured on a level playing field. Access to quality education, professional networks, capital, and mentorship opportunities often differs significantly across communities. As a result, they contend that affirmative action remains necessary to compensate for structural disadvantages that continue to exist. This debate has become even more complex with the rise of artificial intelligence. The modern workplace is undergoing profound transformation. Automation, machine learning, and advanced technologies are changing how businesses operate. Across multiple industries, corporations are reducing workforces, automating routine tasks, and restructuring their operations. As these changes accelerate, traditional debates surrounding race, gender, and employment may take on a different character. Future employers may increasingly prioritize technical skills, adaptability, creativity, and specialized expertise. In such an environment, policies designed for the economic realities of the 20th century may require substantial revision. This does not necessarily mean that affirmative action should disappear. However, it does raise important questions about whether existing models remain suitable for the challenges of the 21st century. Perhaps the future lies not in abandoning affirmative action entirely, but in redesigning it to address modern realities. Ultimately, affirmative action remains one of the most difficult public policy questions facing many societies. On one hand, it emerged as a response to genuine historical injustices and helped expand opportunities for groups that had long been excluded from economic advancement. On the other hand, critics argue that prolonged reliance on race-based policies may create inefficiencies, undermine merit-based systems, and generate new forms of resentment and division. The challenge for policymakers is finding a balance between correcting historical disadvantages and maintaining competitiveness, efficiency, and fairness in modern institutions. As artificial intelligence reshapes economies and workplaces around the world, this conversation is likely to become even more important in the years ahead. So, what do you think? Has affirmative action fulfilled its purpose, or does it still play an essential role in creating equal opportunity? Should it be maintained, reformed, or replaced altogether? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this discussion insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more thought-provoking content. Thanks for watching.